Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you are from. Also, what time is it? They say no one screams after 3:17 a.m. on Crooked Pine Road. Not because the terror stops, but because by then, there's nothing left to scream with. I first heard that phrase from an old woman who ran a beat-up gas station on the outskirts of Hollow Creek. She said it while sliding a crumpled receipt across the counter, her gaze never lifting from the smudged glass between us. I laughed then, thinking it was local nonsense. But the way her hand trembled, and how she made the sign of the cross with a flick of her wrist afterward, made the laugh die in my throat. That was 3 days before everything went to hell. I had come to Hollow Creek to write. I needed quiet, somewhere to shut off the noise of city life, the internet, my ex, and the kind of friends who only show up when things are going well. A writer's retreat, I called it, but I didn't pick some cozy Airbnb or lakeside cabin with complimentary wine and a fireplace. I wanted something raw, isolated. So I found the old Morley house, a Victorian-era ruin perched at the very edge of Crooked Pine Road, too remote for tourists, too haunted by gossip for locals. The photos online made it look like a fixer-upper. The price made it irresistible. There was no lock on the door when I arrived, just a rusted handle and a deep scratch along the frame, like someone, or something, had been dragged across it. The realtor said it had been vandalized a few months back. I brushed it off. I unloaded my bags, set up my laptop in what used to be the dining room, and told myself this was exactly what I needed. Solitude, focus, discipline. But that night, my first night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of screaming. It didn't come from outside. It came from the house. I shot up in bed, heart punching through my ribs. At first, I thought it was a dream. Maybe a fox screaming in the woods like I'd read about. But this wasn't a fox. This was a voice, human, high, pitched, raw, full of that throat, shredding panic you can't fake. And it stopped. Sharp. As if it had been cut off mid-breath. I stared into the dark until my eyes adjusted. The only light came from the half-moon pouring through the cracked window. I reached for my phone. Dead. No warning. It had been at 78% before I went to bed. I got up barefoot on creaking floorboards and crept through the hallway. Each step echoed like it didn't belong in the house, like the walls weren't used to anyone being alive inside. The screaming didn't start again. The silence was worse, the kind that feels too full, like something is holding its breath right behind you. I checked every room. Nothing. Just dust, rotted curtains, and old furniture covered with stained sheets. Except the attic door. It was open. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't even seen the string hanging down from the ceiling when I arrived. But now it swung slightly, like it had just been pulled. I didn't go up. Not that night. I told myself it was the wind, that maybe some animal had gotten in. Something reasonable. The mind is good at building lies that help you sleep. The next day, I drove into town, the same gas station, same old woman behind the counter. "Did you hear it?" she asked without turning. I blinked. "Excuse me?" She rang up my water and snack bars. The screaming. I hesitated. "You're messing with me." She finally looked at me then. Her eyes were gray, not pale, not cloudy. Just gray, like old stone soaked in rain. She said, "If you stay there, set an alarm. Wake yourself at 3. Get out of bed. If you hear screaming, do not leave your room. And never, never, go up to the attic." I wanted to ask more, press her. But she was already turning away, closing the register with a firm click like the conversation was over. That night, I didn't set an alarm, didn't have to. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up again. No dream, just awareness. As if something had tapped on the back of my eyes and said, "Time's up." The screaming returned, this time closer. It sounded like a man now. Hoarse, desperate. He wasn't yelling words, just pain. That kind of animal moan that stretches long and ends with a gurgling sob. I sat in bed frozen, nails biting into my knees through the blanket. Then I heard the thud. Upstairs. Above me. In the attic. Something heavy, like furniture scraping across the floor, followed by another scream, short, broken, like a final breath. Then silence, again. Morning came like a mercy. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I found a trail of dirt leading from the front door to the base of the attic steps. Not footprints, just a drag, like someone had been pulled. I didn't go up. Instead, I drove back into town. Not to the gas station. To the local library. It smelled like old paper and loneliness. The librarian was an old man who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle when I asked if they had records on the Morley house. He grunted and pointed. Last row. Local history. Look for anything about the Hollow Creek vanishings. The word punched a hole in my gut. Vanishings. I pulled every book I could carry. Newspaper clippings. Handwritten records. Grainy photographs. A few names came up again and again. 1971, Claire Bennett, 14. Last seen riding her bike down Crooked Pine Road. 1986, David and Maria Lofton. Honeymoon cabin near the woods. Disappeared without a trace. 1993, Jacob Feller, 17. Reported missing after a dare to spend one night in the Morley house. 2010, Officer Renee Caulfield. Responded to a disturbance call. Her last radio transmission ended with a scream at 3:17 a.m., every single one gone. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just gone. But it got worse. A photo buried in the back of a yellowing binder, labeled simply Morley, 1902. It showed the house newer then. No rot, no broken windows. And on the porch, a family. Man, woman, 2 children. Standing straight, unsmiling, eyes too dark for the faded photo. And behind them, in the attic window, a face, half hidden, pressed to the glass, twisted in a scream. That night, I locked the attic door. I found an old metal bar in the basement, rusted but strong enough. I jammed it across the doorframe and hammered it into place. Told myself if there was something up there, it could stay locked in. 3:17 a.m. came anyway. The screaming didn't start in the attic. It started in my room. A girl's voice. Sharp, shaking, coming from the corner. But there was no one there. Then a boy's voice. A whisper by my ear. Don't listen. It wants you to come. My blood turned to ice. I stayed in bed. Eyes squeezed shut, fists clenched. The voices overlapped. Begging, crying, warning, screaming. Like a chorus of the lost. And then the attic door shook. Not once. Over and over. Boom. Boom. Bum, like fists pounding against it, scratching, then the unmistakable sound of someone weeping on the other side. I didn't sleep, not even when it stopped. At dawn, the door was still locked, the bar still held, but claw marks, deep angry grooves ran down the wood, fresh. I was done, I packed. Called a tow for my car. It had mysteriously refused to start. The driver showed up around noon. Skinny guy with bags under his eyes and a permanent scowl. When I told him where I was staying, he paled. You stayed there? He asked. Whole night. 3, I said. 3 nights. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, you're lucky you're not just a whisper now. As he hooked up the car, I saw something strange. On the rear bumper, muddy handprints, small ones, like a child's. But the fingers were too long. I left Hollow Creek that day. But last night in my apartment back in the city I woke up. 3:17 a.m. And from the hallway, just past the bedroom door, I heard it. A scream. A single, bone-splitting scream. Then silence. And now I see it. The attic door. It's in my ceiling, and the string is swinging. It wasn't there the night before. I'm sure of it. The ceiling above my bed was smooth. Flat. Unremarkable. Now, there's a door. An attic door. Just like the one in the Morley house. Wooden, warped, with a frayed string hanging down like an invitation. I stood under it at 3:22 a.m., holding a flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other like either would help. My apartment's power was flickering. My phone had no signal. The city that never sleeps was dead quiet outside my window. I pulled the string. It came down slow, groaning like old bones shifting. The hatch creaked open, and the ladder extended one stiff joint at a time, each step shivering into place. I didn't want to go up, but I couldn't not look. Something wanted me to see. The flashlight beam trembled as I climbed. The attic space above shouldn't have existed. My apartment's on the top floor. There's no crawl space, no storage. But I stepped into something real. Dust choked the air. The walls were wood, paneled and sagging, old like they'd been there for decades. And in the center of the floor, etched into the planks, was a circle. A black mark burned in like a brand. Inside it something moved. It was hunched, pale, thin, like a child who hadn't eaten in years. But the limbs were wrong, too long. Joints bent backwards. No face, just stretched, smooth skin where the features should have been. It was crying, a sound like broken glass being pulled through a throat, and then it turned toward me. No eyes. But it saw me. I dropped the flashlight. Darkness swallowed everything. I scrambled backward, fell down the ladder, hit the floor hard enough to knock the breath out of me. The attic door slammed shut above me, so hard that plaster dust rained from the ceiling. But it didn't stay shut, because now it opens every night at 3:17. Sometimes it creaks a little. Sometimes it moans like something's trying to squeeze through. Sometimes I hear footsteps, and they're getting closer. 3 days later, I tried to tell someone. My friend Nate came over, reluctantly. He didn't believe in ghost stories, but I was desperate. I begged him to stay just one night, just to see. That night, we stayed up together, had every light on, played music, drank, tried to laugh it off. But I watched the clock more than I watched him. 3:16 a.m., I told him to get ready. His smirk faded. 3:17, the lights died, all of them. The silence snapped down like a trap. Then the hatch above us creaked. I turned on the flashlight. The string was swinging. Nate whispered, "You rigged this. This is some sick prank." I didn't reply, because footsteps had started to come down the ladder, one slow step at a time. The beam caught a shape. Nate screamed, ran for the door. I ran too, but when I looked back, just for a second, I saw it, not the thing. Nate, still in the apartment, frozen, staring at the shape on the ladder. His mouth was open, eyes wide, not moving, not breathing. I grabbed his arm. It was cold. I pulled, screamed his name, but he wouldn't come, wouldn't move. Then he turned to me. His mouth opened wider, too wide. His jaw cracked with the motion, and he whispered, in a voice that wasn't his, "It followed you. It's inside now." I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away. By the time I returned, with the police, the apartment was empty. No sign of Nate, no attic door. Just smooth ceiling, like it had never been there. But that night I dreamed of it. The Morley house. Except it was taller now, with more windows, and behind every one, something stared out. Something waiting. I haven't slept in 3 days. Every time I close my eyes, I see that attic door. Hear Nate's voice, warped and echoing in ways a human voice shouldn't echo. It followed you. It's inside now. I thought I was going insane. I even considered checking myself into a hospital. But this morning, I opened my blinds, and the Morley house was there. Not the real one, the one hours away down that cursed stretch of road. No, another one, a copy. Right across the street, 3 stories tall, shingled roof, sagging porch. Same blackened windows, same crooked shape. Only this one wasn't there yesterday, I swear it. I live in a packed New York neighborhood. There's no way a house just appears. No permits, no crews, no demolition, no foundation. But there it was, and worse, no one else seemed to notice. The couple walking their dog didn't even glance at it. The man on the corner smoking a cigarette didn't blink. The house was like some horrible dream I'd woken up into. I took pictures. My phone wouldn't save them. I tried to draw it. My hand kept twitching. By the end, all I had were jagged lines, like roots or veins. I sat in my apartment, shaking, until the sun went down. That's when the doorbell rang. I didn't move. It rang again. Then 3 knocks. Slow, precise. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I backed away. Another knock. Louder this time, like bones slapping wood. Then the light in the hallway flickered, and I heard something sliding under the door. A folded piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling fingers. 1 line, handwritten in smeared ink. They're building it closer. I left. I didn't pack. Didn't lock the door. Just ran. Took the train out of the city and didn't stop until I was in upstate New York, crashing on my sister's couch in her farmhouse. She doesn't ask questions. Not yet. I told her I needed to get out of the city. Work stress. Bad breakup. The usual lies. I thought I'd be safe here. Until I took a walk this morning. Her property is wide, acres of trees and hills. And at the edge of the woods, there it was again. The house. But smaller, half-built, like it was growing. The walls were there. Frame complete. Door installed. No windows yet, no roof. Just the skeleton of that same damn shape. Crooked. Hungry, I turned around and ran. But the smell followed me. That damp, rotten wood stink. The scent of something ancient and buried clawing its way back up. And now tonight, the attic door is back in the ceiling above my sister's living room. I didn't tell her. She wouldn't believe me. No one ever does. But I sit under it every night, knife in hand. Because I know what's coming down. It's building itself closer. 1 house at a time. And soon, there won't be anywhere left to run. I woke up with dirt under my fingernails. That wouldn't be terrifying, except I fell asleep on the couch. Inside, knife still clutched in one hand, blanket wrapped around me, TV flickering static. No memory of getting up. But when I looked down, I saw the floor was speckled with mud. Damp footprints. My footprints, leading from the back door, out into the woods. I checked the latch. Still locked. Bolted. No windows open. No sign of a break-in. Except for the attic door. It was open. Not fully. Just an inch. As if it was peeking down at me. I didn't move for hours. Just stared at it. I thought maybe my mind was breaking. But then, my sister screamed. I bolted down the hall. Her door was open. She was standing in the middle of the room, pointing at her closet, pale as death. I opened the door. Nothing. But the smell hit me, like meat left in the sun, like wet soil and hot iron. She said she heard scratching, said she saw fingers, long, jointless fingers, curling out from the darkness between her shirts. We both left the house that day. Drove until we ran out of gas. She thinks I'm having a breakdown. She's not wrong. But I know it's not just in my head, because this morning I found something in my pocket. A small, wooden carving, roughly the size of a child's doll, shaped like a person, only wrong, too thin, no eyes, hollow where the mouth should be. And carved on its chest was the symbol again, the one I first saw scratched into the Morley house floorboards. That same closed loop, jagged in the middle like teeth. I threw it into the river. But an hour later, when I checked my bag, there were 2 more. We're in a motel now, middle of nowhere. Nothing but cows and telephone poles. My sister doesn't talk to me much. She's been keeping to herself. Drawing, mostly. That's the worst part. Because tonight, I peeked at her notebook while she was sleeping. She's drawing them. The hollow ones. Dozens of them. Lurking behind trees. Hanging from ceilings. Hunched in the corners of bedrooms, always faceless, always staring. In one drawing, they're crawling out of a wall. In another, they're holding hands in a circle around a crumbling house. And in the center of that circle is me. I tried to wake her, but she wouldn't open her eyes, wouldn't respond, just breathing fast, twitching, whispering. They live in the rooms behind the rooms. The doors are waking up. I tried calling an ambulance. No signal. I tried driving again. The roads looped back. Over and over. I ended up back at the same diner off Highway 7. even though I never turned around. That's when I knew. They're not just building the house closer. They're rewriting the map, bending it, stitching it, drawing it toward me like a net, and I'm caught. Tonight, I looked outside. The woods are gone, replaced by walls, cracked wood, dirty windows, a roof that blocks the stars. They built the house around us while we slept. The motel is gone. The world is gone. There's only one thing left, a staircase, leading to the attic. The door is open now, and something is waiting at the top. I took the knife with me, not because I thought it would help, not against whatever lives in that place, but holding it made me feel less empty. The staircase was narrower than before, the walls tighter, angled wrong, like whoever built it had never seen a human house before, only tried to imitate one from broken memories and rotted blueprints. Each step creaked like it was screaming. My sister didn't wake up when I left. She lay on the floor in the motel, that wasn't, whispering something I couldn't hear. Something not meant for me. I reached the attic door. It was still cracked open, the same inch. And now I know why. Because it wasn't just a door. It was watching me. The air was colder there, not in a natural way. More like all the warmth was being pulled through the crack, sucked into that space beyond. A black vacuum that hungered for breath and light and memory. I pushed the door. It didn't open. It breathed. Exhaled this thick, wet gust like a mouth opening after centuries sealed shut. And then, it let me in. The attic was wrong. Not in the usual haunted house way. There were no cobwebs, no trunks, no rocking chairs. It was endless. Like the attic stretched out into forever, a single rotting corridor that bent in on itself. I could see the curve of it. Like walking through the inside of a rib cage, things moved in the shadows. Thin, lurching things. Some crawled along the ceiling like spiders that had forgotten how to be spiders. Some floated just above the ground, dragging shrouds made of teeth. I walked, and they followed. Always behind, always silent. Then the lights began to flicker, though there were no bulbs. Just that pulsing glow from somewhere below the floorboards, like the house itself had blood that glowed. And at the end of the attic, I saw a mirror, cracked down the center, framed in bone, and inside it was me. Only not me. This version of me was grinning, wearing my face like a mask, hands pressed to the glass from the other side, scraping at it, leaving blood. He mouthed something. I didn't understand at first. Then I saw it. I let them in. Then the glass cracked, spider-webbed out. The thing inside slammed its face against the mirror and whispered again. Now it's your turn. I ran. Back through the ribcage corridor. But the hallway had changed. Now every door was open. Every room behind it screaming. I saw flashes, images I can't forget. A room filled with people standing perfectly still, heads turned backwards, mouths sewn shut. A kitchen where the food was still moving, crawling off the plates and whispering names. A nursery where the mobile spun itself, each dangling toy a shriveled finger. And always, always the symbols, etched into the floor, burned into the walls, carved into the skin of things that should not be alive. I found my sister in the final room. She was standing by a window. Only the window didn't show the outside. It showed another version of the house. One beneath this one, where things were watching us through their own glass. She turned to me and smiled. "Do you see it now?" she whispered. I nodded, because behind her, the mirror, me was waiting, hands outstretched. I didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to go near it. But the mirror pulled me. Not physically. Not with arms or claws or vines like you'd expect in a nightmare. It pulled with recognition. That awful familiarity when you see someone from a dream you've never had and they smile like they've known you all your life. The reflection of me raised its hand again. Not to wave, to beckon. My sister didn't move, didn't flinch. She just whispered, "You have to." Her voice wasn't pleading, it was resigned, like she'd already seen the outcome. Like this was the part where I stopped being myself. I don't even know what this is, I told her, my voice trembling. She didn't look at me. She looked at the mirror. It's home, she said. I should have run. God, I should have run. But there's a thing that happens when fear lasts too long. It stops being sharp. It settles into your bones like cement. And when you've seen the impossible for long enough, it starts to look manageable, understandable, even inviting. I reached toward the glass. My reflection smiled wider, not a grin. A splitting, like skin unraveling from something trying to come through. Its hand met mine, cold through the pain. Only there was no pain anymore. The glass folded like silk, and I fell through. It wasn't like passing through a mirror. It was like being peeled from reality, like my thoughts got left behind. Like I wasn't dragging my body into the other world. Something else was wearing it forward. When I landed, I was standing in the same attic. Only not. The floorboards pulsed. The beams were made of bone, real bone. I could hear the marrow whispering inside them. And every window looked inward. That's what broke me, finally. There were windows on every wall, but instead of showing outside, they showed rooms inside this same house. Each one different. Each one worse than the last. A church with no pews. Only slabs with bodies stitched into them. A hallway where people stood facing corners, sobbing in time with a grandfather clock made of meat. A bathroom where the water ran upward, boiling, and the mirror there reflected nothing at all. And in one of those windows I saw my sister, still in the original attic, smiling, waving at me. This place wasn't a house. It was a nest, and something had been growing here, for centuries, feeding on people who came too close, people like me, people like her. I turned and saw him, my reflection, now fully flesh, fully free. He stood across the room, same eyes, same face, only emptier. He tilted his head and his mouth didn't move, but I heard him in my skull. You've given me your name. Now I'll take your place. I ran. There was no door, only a hallway shaped like a throat. The walls pulsed, breathed. Every step felt like I was being swallowed deeper. Behind me, I heard my own voice shouting, "Come back. It's better this way. You'll never be alone again." I don't know how long I ran. There are no clocks here. Only that sound, the endless ticking inside the walls, like something waiting to wake up. And then I found it. A crack in the floorboards, barely wide enough to push a hand through, but behind it I saw light. Not sunlight, not moonlight. A flickering motel lamp. My way out. I screamed. I begged. I clawed at the wood until my fingers bled. Then from the other side a hand reached through, small. Familiar. My sister's hand. She grabbed mine, pulled, and for a moment, just one moment, I thought I was going to make it out, until I looked up and saw her face, not my sister. Not anymore, and she whispered, "You belong to the house now," and let go. I hit the floor hard. Not wood this time, teeth. The ground was made of massive molars, yellowed, cracked, and wet with something that smelled like vinegar and rot. They clicked softly beneath me as I scrambled to my feet. The house wasn't done playing with me. It was just getting started. I don't know what part of the house I was in now. The walls pulsed. Every few feet they opened and shut like gills, breathing in stale, icy air and exhaling something thick and warm that made my skin itch. And the light, it came from within the walls. Faint, like blood through thin skin. Everything glowed a sick orange, and shadows moved where I wasn't looking. The longer I stood still, the more I could hear the house thinking. It didn't speak in words. It remembered in screams. There were voices behind the walls. Hundreds of them, some begging, some laughing, some stuck mid-sentence forever, and all of them knew my name. "Come home, Sam. You were born here. You just forgot. She never left. She was always waiting for you." I shut my eyes and ran again. Every door I tried either melted in my hands or bit down when I touched the knob, until I found the library. if you can even call it that. The room was filled with books, sure, but they weren't made of paper. Each one had a spine, a real spine, vertebrae connected by sinew, with covers stitched from skin and inked in a language that made my nose bleed just by looking at it. I didn't want to touch them, but I did, because one of them was breathing. It gasped when I picked it up. Warmth spread through my hands. I could feel its heartbeat, and then it opened itself. Not to a story, to a memory. My memory. Me, age 6. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring up into the attic. A cold breeze at my back. My sister whispering, "Don't ever go up there without me." I hadn't remembered that until now. The book made me. Another page turned on its own. Now I was 9, hiding under the porch, watching a man in a red coat walk up the steps to our front door. He never knocked, never rang the bell. He just stood there, grinning. My mom had said later it was a traveling salesman, but that man never left. I saw him again years later, in a photograph tucked in the attic wall, posing with the original builders of the house. The book turned again. Now I was 14, lying awake, hearing the soft thud of footsteps in the attic when everyone else was asleep. I dropped the book. It screamed as it hit the floor, and the walls of the library shivered, because the house wasn't just remembering me, it was rewriting me. That's when I saw the next door. Tall, black, no handle, but something carved into the front. A phrase, scorched into the wood, to go back, leave something behind. I didn't understand what it meant at first. Then the pain hit me, in my chest, behind my eyes, like something was being torn out, and I realized this place didn't just trap you, it harvested you. Every memory, every face, every moment that made you you. If I wanted out, I had to give something up. I pressed my hand to the door. A needle, thin tongue slid out and pierced my palm. My blood hissed as it hit the wood, and I felt it begin pulling. It took my 10th birthday. The way my dad smiled when I opened the telescope, the smell of the cake, the exact pitch of the song. Gone. Clean, like it never happened. And the door opened. Beyond it, I saw the motel room, exactly as I'd left it. Dim lamp, musty carpet, my sister's duffel bag on the floor. Only one thing was off. She wasn't there. I stepped through, back into my world, or what was left of it, because something had come with me. I felt it settle behind my eyes, watching, smiling, and in the motel mirror, I could still see the attic, just waiting. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The motel room looked normal, sounded normal, even smelled like cheap carpet and pine sol, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like something was pressing its face against the glass of the world, watching me from the other side. The mirror buzzed. Not like electricity, like teeth chattering. My sister's bag was still on the floor. Her hoodie was still on the bed. But she was nowhere. Not in the bathroom. Not outside. Not at the front desk. And her phone was sitting on the nightstand, screen still cracked from when it fell off the car dashboard yesterday. At least, it should have been yesterday. The timestamp said it was 3 days ago, and her call log was full of missed calls. From me, my hands were shaking when I picked it up. No voicemails, just missed calls, and one text. From an unknown number, no contact name, no profile picture. Just this, she went deeper. Another text arrived as I was staring at it, from the same number. "You opened the wrong door." I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet and sank an inch deep, like the floor wasn't solid anymore. The mirror across the room fogged over. I didn't breathe on it. The bathroom wasn't steamy. It was writing itself. A single line appeared, like a finger dragging through mist. "Okundr thbed." I didn't want to, but I did, because that's what fear does. It controls you without saying a word. There was something folded under the bed. Paper, yellowed, damp. I pulled it out, and it tore slightly, like skin peeling from old bone. It was a map of the house. Not the house as I remembered it, but a twisted version. Corridors that spiraled into each other. Rooms that didn't exist when we were kids. One labeled simply, Sister's Room, now the throat, and another labeled, The last doors only opens for two. The rest of the paper was blank, until I blinked. Then, in my sister's handwriting, I swear it was hers, I saw a message appear in the bottom corner. It's eating me, Sam. But I'm still alive. I stared at those words for what felt like hours. Then the motel room started humming. A low, wet vibration, like something digesting just behind the walls. And then, the closet door creaked open. No one had touched it, and inside was a staircase. Old, wooden, splintered, and crooked, lit by a single flickering bulb above it. Not motel lighting, house lighting. I grabbed the map, and I stepped into the closet. The smell hit me first, copper, mold, ashes, then the cold. The kind of cold that learns your name before it touches your skin. The staircase didn't end. It just spiraled deeper. And as I descended, the walls began to whisper. She asked for you. You waited too long. She's almost gone. I don't know how long I walked. The map began to bleed in my hand, not ink. Blood. It dripped down my wrist as I reached the bottom step. And there it was. The door. The one labeled, The last door. So only opens for two. And next to it, a second staircase. Leading down into the dark, a handprint on the rail. Small, familiar, hers. I looked back. But there was no way up anymore. Just me. And the house. And what it wanted. The second staircase was narrower. Too narrow. The walls pressed in, brushing my shoulders. The ceiling bowed like it was breathing above me, waiting. The handprint on the railing was still wet, smaller than mine. Fresh. My sister had come this way, recently. And if she was still leaving marks, maybe she wasn't entirely gone. The air changed after the fourth step. It wasn't just cold anymore. It hummed. Like something alive was coiled beneath the house, and every stair took me closer to its pulse. Each footfall echoed in a way that didn't match the space, like I was walking through someone else's memory. Halfway down, I passed a photo on the wall. Black and white, framed, but wrong. It was me and my sister. Same age, same faces. Only we were sitting at a dinner table we never owned. And in the background, through a warped window, there was a third person standing in the yard. No face, just shadow. Arms too long, one hand resting gently on my sister's shoulder from behind the glass. I turned around, thought about going back, but the stairs behind me were gone. Not crumbled, not hidden, just no longer there. Only more staircase below. So I kept walking. At the bottom, the walls gave way to a corridor. Uneven. The wallpaper looked stitched together, literal seams running down it like surgical scars, and something moved just beneath it. Following me, I heard her, my sister's voice. But it wasn't coming from ahead. It was coming from inside the wall. Sam, please, don't listen to it. Don't trust anything with my face. The light bulb above me popped, pitch black. Then, a flicker, and standing at the end of the hall was her. Or something that looked like her. She smiled, but the corners of her mouth didn't stop stretching. Sam, she said, her voice syrupy, sweet. You finally made it. I missed you. I froze. Then she said it again, but this time in a different tone. Higher, like a question. Sam, you finally made it. I missed you. Her face ticked slightly to the left, like a bad puppet readjusting its strings. Behind me, something began dragging across the floor. Not footsteps, fingertips. The stitched wall split open, and an arm slid out. Too many knuckles, too many nails. It reached toward me, then stopped, not touching, just pointing, to a door that hadn't been there a moment ago. A door labeled, the first room we ever locked. I remembered it instantly. We were 6. There'd been a smell in the attic, something wet and wrong. We locked the door and never went back. And now, the house wanted me to open it again. The false version of my sister was still watching me, mouth twitching, hands behind her back, hiding something. I stepped away from her, toward the door, and it breathed when I touched it. Yes, breathed. The door opened inward, No hinges, just skin peeling open like a wound. And inside was the attic. Ours, exactly as it looked when we were kids, except, floating in the center of it, suspended in midair by barbed threads of hair and teeth, was my real sister, eyes closed, mouth stitched shut, a note pinned to her chest, one must stay for the other to leave. Behind me, the door slammed shut, and the false sister whispered behind my ear, "Pick." I stood frozen. The air in the attic stank like rotting flowers, sweet, but wrong. The kind of smell that clung to your teeth and made you taste death every time you breathed. My real sister hung suspended by strands of something, maybe hair, maybe nerves. Whatever it was, it pulsed slightly, like it was feeding off her. And the note on her chest kept shifting, not in place, in wording. It now read, "One must suffer, the other forgets. Then one must feed, the other walks free. Then, finally, one must stay. The other leaves." Pick? The false sister whispered again, but her voice didn't come from beside me anymore. It came from inside me. I reached out toward the real her, but the threads recoiled, tightened, cut into her skin. She twitched, bleeding, even in unconsciousness. The false sister stepped into view, her head tilting sharply sideways. Crack, crack. Like her bones were made of hollow branches. She smiled, and I saw her teeth weren't teeth anymore. They were keys. Tiny, jagged, rusted keys. "Every room needs a door," she whispered. "And every door needs a lock. Locks need keys, and keys need pain." I looked down at my hand. A key had formed there, growing from my palm like a tumor of metal and bone. It burned. The attic creaked. Something above us moved, heavy, dragging its weight across the rafters. The false sister's smile vanished. She stepped back into the shadow. "Choose quickly," she hissed, "or it chooses for you." Then she vanished. The sound above intensified, scraping, sniffing. I ran to my sister, cut the threads. Every one of them screamed when I severed it, high-pitched and wet, like a child's cry through a broken speaker. My sister fell into my arms, still breathing, still warm. But the room wasn't happy. The walls shuddered. The floor split slightly, revealing something beneath, an eye, huge, blinking, and then a voice, not spoken aloud, but poured into my thoughts. "You took what was not yours. She is mine. To walk free, you must take her place." The door behind me swung open again, but the hallway outside had changed. No more stitched walls, only mirrors, hundreds of them, all showing me. But in every one I looked slightly different. In one I was missing my mouth. In another my eyes bled black. In yet another I was a child again, but with the house's staircase growing from my back like a twisted spine. The final mirror showed my sister, alone, crying, and behind her, me, hung from the ceiling, just like she had been. I understood now. The house didn't kill you, it kept you, warped you, turned you into one of its tools. I turned to her, my sister, awake now, barely. She opened her mouth to speak, but only blood came out. I held her. I kissed her forehead. Then I stood up, stepped back into the attic, and whispered, "Take me." The moment I said it, the threads returned, faster this time, like they'd been waiting. They wrapped around my arms, my legs, my chest, my neck, and lifted me into the air. The pain was unreal, like being shredded and reassembled all at once. I screamed until I couldn't anymore. The last thing I saw before my eyes sealed shut was my sister crawling toward the attic door and crawling out, alive, free. The attic closed behind her, and I hung there, alone, until the false sister stepped back into view and smiled up at me. "Welcome home," she said. "We've been waiting for you." It had been days. Or was it weeks? Time in this house was a blur. The walls stretched like elastic, every room reshaping itself when I wasn't looking. But I knew one thing with clarity. I was free. At least, that's what I tried to tell myself. The sun hung low outside the cracked windows, casting long shadows across the hallway. The house groaned, its creaking like 1,000 old bones shifting in the dark. I could feel it watching, waiting, ready to pull me back into the maze I had just escaped. But for now, I was outside. I was alive. And that felt like the only victory. I had left him behind. I had chosen him. It wasn't a choice at all, was it? I had to stop thinking about him. It was getting harder. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, twisted, hung from the ceiling in that room. The look on his face as he realized the price I had paid. The price he had forced me to pay. But then, a new feeling gnawed at my insides. A pull, a whisper, like the faintest breeze, ruffling the hair on the back of my neck. It's not over. The voice was mine. But it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like me anymore. I stood there in the hallway, staring down the narrow corridor where my sister's room used to be. But it wasn't her room anymore. It was just another place in this house. Just another room meant to confuse me, meant to make me forget what I had done. I turned. I shouldn't have. But I did. The attic door was cracked open, just a sliver. I hadn't remembered leaving it like that. And why hadn't I noticed it before? I hesitated. There was no reason to go up there. Nothing up there could help me. But the pull was growing stronger. It was calling to me. The stairs creaked under my feet, groaning with age and secrets. I had been up there once, but I had left before I could really see what lay beyond the shadows. Now the shadows seemed to reach for me, beckoning me in with promises I knew better than to trust. The door to the attic opened with a slow, reluctant groan, and what I saw inside made my breath freeze. The room had changed. It was darker, heavier. The air was thick, like something was pressing down on me. There were no windows, just cracked and bleeding walls that seemed to be made of skin. The smell was worse now, like wet earth and decay, like the scent of things long buried, and at the center of the room, hanging from the rafters, was him. But not just him. It was me. Not the version I had left behind. Not the version I was now. This was the version I had been when I first entered the house. The version before I had made the decision to leave him behind. It was like looking into a mirror from another life, a life where I was still trapped. The false sister stood in the corner of the room, smiling, her teeth glinting in the dim light. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at him. I stumbled backward, my breath caught in my throat. I wasn't breathing, not really. I couldn't be. You thought you could escape? The false sister's voice was a lullaby now, sweet and venomous. You thought you chose. Her eyes glittered with a terrible amusement. The choice was never yours. It's never been yours. Not really. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it. I wasn't going anywhere. Don't you understand? She purred, stepping closer. The house never lets go. Her words were a slow caress that wrapped around my throat like fingers. You are part of it. Always. No matter where you run. I turned, desperate now, slamming my hands against the walls. But they didn't move. They never moved. I'm sorry, I whispered. But the words meant nothing now. Not in this place. The room shifted. The floor buckled beneath my feet. The real version of him was still hanging there, but now his eyes opened, and then he smiled. His mouth was filled with keys, tiny rusted things that gleamed like metal teeth. They twisted, shifting and reshaping, merging into a single, jagged object. I could feel them, those keys, burrowing deep inside me, inside my thoughts. I could feel them turning, unlocking parts of my mind I had never wanted to open. Do you see now? He said. His voice the same, but not his voice at all. It was deeper, older, warped. You didn't just leave me behind. You left yourself. I turned toward the false sister, her smile widening, filling the room with darkness, and then I saw it. The truth. The house hadn't let me go. It had only taken me. The floor beneath my feet cracked open, and in the cracks, I saw her. Not the version of me that had run, not the version that had thought she could escape, but the real me, the one that the house had always claimed. the one that never left, the one who had always been part of it. And now, the house was ready for its next feast. I couldn't shake the sensation that something wasn't right. The house had changed again. We had changed again. I had never been sure if what I remembered about the house was real. Each time I thought I could piece together a memory, it slipped like sand through my fingers. But one thing had always stayed the same, the pull. But now, everything felt different. When I first found the attic door ajar, I thought it was another trick, a game. The house loved its games. It loved to toy with us, to show us something, then rip it away before we could understand. But this time it was different. I stepped inside cautiously, my breath catching in my throat. The stale, wet smell hit me immediately, heavy and suffocating. The air was thick, like the house was breathing in time with my own shaky heartbeat. I was scared in a way I couldn't describe. The attic wasn't just a space to hide forgotten things. It was a place where time bent, where things had never really left. I knew this room. I had known it my whole life, though I had never been inside. Not really. I had only heard the stories. The walls seemed to pulse with some unseen force, as if they were alive, aching with the memories of things best forgotten. And then I saw it. The figure hanging from the rafters. It was him. Not the version I had seen before. Not the ghost I had learned to fear. No, this time he was whole again. Whole and twisted, like a half-formed nightmare, still trying to fit itself into a world it didn't belong to. His eyes were wide open, his expression frozen in an eternal mockery of life. And in his mouth, those keys. Those keys. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. I needed to run. But the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang, trapping me in the dark. It was then that I realized. It wasn't just the house that had changed. It was me. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling, trying to find some trace of reality in this suffocating nightmare. But it wouldn't work. The screen flickered in and out of focus, showing only distorted images, fragments of things that shouldn't exist. I had always thought I was the one who escaped, but now I wasn't sure I ever had. The house wasn't done with me. It had just waited. "You're not alone here," a voice whispered from the shadows. I spun around, but saw nothing. The voice wasn't him. It wasn't the twisted version I had come to fear. This voice was familiar. Too familiar. "You've always been here. Always." I knew it was her before I saw her. The real version of her. The sister I had once been. The one who had died here. The one I had left behind. Her eyes were blackened, hollow, like she had been trapped in this place long before I ever set foot inside. Her face was cracked, as if the very fabric of her existence had been torn and stitched back together with broken memories. "You forgot me," she rasped, her voice like the sound of paper tearing. "I was never meant to be forgotten. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't move. Not anymore." The attic was alive. Every inch of it. The walls moved. The ceiling bent. And that thing hanging from the rafters, its mouth opened. Its eyes stared at me with all the cruelty of something that had never known the concept of mercy. "You're mine," it whispered, the words curling like smoke around me. "We're all part of the house now." And then the house changed. The walls shattered like glass, revealing a place outside of time, outside of everything I thought I knew. I was standing in a vast, empty space. No sky, no ground, just a swirling black void. And there she was, my sister. But not my sister. It wasn't her face anymore. It wasn't even her. She was a reflection, a shadow, something born from the house itself. And just behind her, the figure of the man, him, stood, smiling as if everything had finally fallen into place. "You see," he said, "this is the house's true form. This is what it really is." I realized then. The house wasn't just a building. It was a soul, a hungry thing trapped in time, feeding on the memories of anyone foolish enough to wander too close. And it had always been here. I wanted to scream, to beg for the escape that had always seemed so close, but I was paralyzed, frozen in place as the house began to pull me in, piece by piece, like I was nothing more than a puzzle it had been working on for years. "You were always meant to come back," my sister said, her voice not hers, not anymore. "And now, we'll never leave." Her eyes locked onto mine, and the darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up, but not in the way you might think. It wasn't a normal waking. It wasn't as if I had simply opened my eyes to the familiar, comforting embrace of reality. No, it felt more like being dragged back to the surface after I'd already drowned. The coldness of the air, the sharpness of the silence, it hit me all at once. I was lying on the floor, my body stiff, aching in ways I couldn't explain. I tried to move, to sit up, but the weight of the air itself seemed to hold me down. The attic, the house, it was gone. I was no longer in the attic, or the vast, empty space that had been the last place I remembered. Now, I was in a room I didn't recognize, dim, shadowed, with faded wallpaper that seemed to bleed into the cracks of the ceiling. A single light bulb hung overhead, flickering weakly, casting long, twisted shadows on the walls. I sat up, my head spinning, trying to make sense of it all. But the more I tried to think, the more I realized that nothing made sense anymore. The floor beneath me creaked, and I froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I had imagined it, but then I heard it again. A faint shuffle. A footstep. Someone else was here. I whipped my head around, searching the room, but it was empty. Completely empty. The only thing in it was the light and the silence, and the feeling. The unmistakable feeling that I wasn't alone, that I hadn't been for a long time. Then, a whisper. Low. Inaudible. But there. It was a name. My name. I flinched, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end, but there was nothing to see, nothing to explain where it had come from. Just the empty room, the lonely silence. And then another whisper. "You're here," it said. "But you don't belong." My pulse quickened, the words rattling through my mind like a bell tolling for something I couldn't remember. I don't belong. I got to my feet, my legs shaking, my breath coming in shallow bursts. The whisper came again, this time clearer. "You're trapped." I stumbled back, my hands pressing against the peeling wallpaper, my mind racing. Where was I? What had happened to the house? To the attic? To the man? To her? I moved cautiously toward the door, barely daring to breathe. The feeling that someone, was watching me was suffocating. Every step I took, every breath I drew, felt like a trap tightening around me. When I reached for the door handle, it was cold. Too cold. I hesitated, unsure if I even wanted to open it. But I had to. I had no choice. Something was pulling me forward. I turned the handle, my fingers trembling. The door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond. It was another hallway. But this one was worse. The walls seemed to bend and stretch in unnatural ways, warping and twisting with every glance. The air felt thick, like a fog you couldn't see, but could feel all around you. And at the end of the hall, there was a door. Not just any door. The door, the one I had never seen before, but knew instinctively. The one that had always been there. Even though I had never walked down this hallway, it felt familiar. Too familiar. I approached the door, each step heavier than the last. It was covered in dark, swirling patterns. The wood rotting away in places. The light from the hallway barely touched it, as if the door itself absorbed the light, refusing to let anything in or out. My hand reached for the handle. The second my fingers brushed it, a sound filled the air. A soft, distant hum, like a lullaby sung by ghosts. A sound so old it felt as though it had been waiting for me. I turned the handle. The room beyond the door was not what I expected. It was a mirror of the attic, but darker. The air was colder, the walls narrower. A feeling of dread weighed down on me, pressing harder than anything I had ever experienced. But what terrified me the most wasn't the room itself. It was the thing standing in the center, It wasn't the man. Not exactly. It was him, but not him. He was different. Twisted, like a memory warped beyond recognition. His form was distorted, stretched out of shape, as if the house had tried to recreate him from the pieces of itself it had devoured. His eyes were hollow, his mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. "You came back," he whispered, his voice like glass breaking. "You always come back." I couldn't breathe. He reached toward me, his fingers curling with an eerie slowness, as if savoring the moment. The air around me grew thick with tension, every inch of my skin crawling with the sensation of being watched. I tried to run, but my body wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot, trapped in the room with him. "You can't escape," he said, his voice echoing around me. "None of us can." And then, just as I thought I might lose all sense of myself, everything went quiet. Too quiet. The walls closed in, the room shrinking around me until I was drowning in the darkness. The door slammed shut behind me, and I was alone. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't peaceful. I heard the whisper again, growing louder, swirling around me like a storm. "You're here forever," it said. "You are the house now." The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole was the man's twisted grin. I don't know how much time passed. It could have been seconds. It could have been days. The moment I stepped into the darkness, everything else stopped. Time, space, thought. None of it made sense anymore. At first, I thought I was dead. The darkness was so absolute, so all-encompassing, that for a while I couldn't even feel my own body. It was like being submerged in a void where everything, every part of me, was gone. The air didn't exist, or if it did, it was too thick to breathe. But then, the feeling came back. The sharp ache in my chest, the sting in my lungs, the slow return of my senses. And with it, the panic. I could feel something pressing against me. A coldness, a heaviness. But I couldn't see it. I couldn't see anything. Not even my hands. "Get up." The voice was like a knife scraping against bone. It made my stomach churn. The words weren't directed at me specifically. They were more like an order, a command, drifting through the darkness. I tried to move, but I couldn't. The pressure around me was too much. My limbs felt like they were locked in place, trapped by some unseen force. Every time I attempted to break free, the weight would double, forcing me to the ground again. I felt like I was being crushed beneath an endless expanse of darkness. But the voice came again. "Get up." This time, I tried harder. I gathered what little strength I had left and pushed myself to my knees. The air was thick, suffocating, but with each movement, the weight seemed to lessen just a little. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, I managed to get to my feet. I stood in the dark, not knowing where I was, what I was standing on, or even if I was truly standing at all, but I was moving. Then, the ground beneath me shifted. The floor cracked open, splitting wide with a sound that felt like the entire world breaking apart. My heart stopped. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped. I was falling. I fell through endless space, the wind rushing past me in a deafening roar. My body twisted and turned, weightless, out of control, plummeting into a darkness that felt colder, deeper than anything I had ever experienced. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the fall stopped. I slammed into the ground, but there was no impact, no pain. My body sank into it like a stone dropped into water, disappearing beneath its surface. The sensation was both suffocating and strange, like being submerged in a thick, sticky liquid that clung to every inch of me. I gasped, pulling myself out of the strange substance, and when I finally stood, I was no longer alone. Figures emerged from the darkness around me, silhouettes at first, then slowly taking shape. People. Or, at least they looked like people. Their eyes were the first thing I noticed. Hollow, dark, like they were empty, like they had been drained of everything that made them human. Their bodies were distorted, twisted into shapes that didn't quite match the movement of their limbs. Their faces were frozen in expressions of pain, their mouths half open, as though they were trying to scream but couldn't. I tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but no words came. I opened my mouth, but it was as if the air itself was thick with silence, crushing my voice before it could leave my throat. Then, one of the figures stepped forward. A man. His face was familiar, but twisted, like a memory I couldn't place. "You're one of us now," he said, his voice echoing in my mind more than in my ears. I froze. "What do you mean?" The words finally came, rasping out from somewhere deep inside me. The man didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached out a hand, his fingers stretching unnaturally long. The others watched, unmoving, like statues. I could feel their gazes on me, cold, unblinking. Their eyes burned into me, making my skin crawl. "We were all brought here." The man's voice echoed again, as if each word was alive, bouncing off the walls of my mind. "Just like you. Just like the others before you." "Others?" I whispered. "What do you mean, others?" His hand stopped just short of my face. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from something darker, something older. "You don't get it, do you?" he said, his voice growing strained. "We can never leave. Not anymore." I opened my mouth to speak again, but the words caught in my throat. My body tensed, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if I could even breathe. "No one leaves." His voice came again, this time a little softer, a little more resigned. "Not after they've been taken." The other figures started to move, slowly, like shadows gliding across the ground. The more they moved, the clearer their faces became. They were all different, but all the same, twisted, broken, disfigured. Some of them had eyes like holes, others had mouths stretched too wide. Others still had features that were almost completely missing. But their eyes were what I couldn't shake. They all had the same dead, hollow look. "You'll understand soon enough," the man said. He stepped backward, his form beginning to fade into the shadows again, blending into the darkness around him. I was left standing there, surrounded by them. The air was thick, still, and the silence came rushing back, a suffocating wave of oppressive quiet. But I could feel it. The walls closing in. The house, and it was alive, and it was waiting. I had never felt so small, so helpless. And I realized then, this wasn't just a house. This was something else. Something far worse. And I was part of it now. The air shifted again, a faint whisper that brushed against my skin, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I wasn't sure what was happening. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. The figures, the people, had disappeared, blending back into the darkness, vanishing like smoke. The man's voice lingered, though, reverberating in my head like an echo that refused to die. "You're one of us now." Those words kept repeating, an incessant hum that scraped against my sanity. But there was something deeper behind them. Something I couldn't quite grasp yet. I staggered forward, my legs weak, my body trembling from the effort of just staying upright. The weight of the air pressing against me felt like it was crushing my very soul. The ground beneath me shifted again, and this time I couldn't tell whether I was moving or if the ground was simply dragging me along. I tried to focus, to stay grounded. I had to find a way out. I had to. But I couldn't think. Every thought felt like it was being pulled away before it could form fully. The darkness was relentless, suffocating, and everywhere I looked, I saw only the same twisted figures fading in and out of the shadows. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. A faint flicker, like the briefest flash of light. It was so small, so fleeting, that I wasn't sure I had seen it at all. But something told me it was important. That it was the key to all of this. I turned, stumbling toward it. My body still fighting against the oppressive darkness. The air grew colder with each step, the whispers of the house growing louder. But the light, however faint, seemed to pull me in. I walked forward faster now, despite the feeling of my limbs getting heavier with every step. The ground beneath me buckled, but I pushed on. I had to get closer. It wasn't until I was almost on top of it that I realized what the light was coming from. A door. It was old, wooden, with intricate carvings running along the edges. The light, faint as it was, seemed to pulse from beneath the doorframe, like something was desperately trying to escape. The air around it hummed with an energy I couldn't understand, a low, vibrating frequency that made my teeth rattle. I reached out for the doorknob, my hand trembling as I gripped it. "Don't open it." The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't the twisted man's either. It came from somewhere behind me, and it wasn't just a voice. It was a feeling. A cold bone, chilling presence that made my stomach drop. I whipped around, searching the shadows for the source, but there was nothing. Nothing but the darkness. I turned back to the door, my fingers still gripping the doorknob. The weight of the house pressing against me, pulling me down. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I twisted the knob. It didn't open. At first, I thought it was stuck. But the moment I tried to push harder, the air around me thickened, pushing back like a tangible force. The humming increased, louder and louder, until I felt like my skull would shatter from the pressure. "Leave it alone." This time, the voice came from all around me, not from just one direction, but from every shadow in the room. Every crack in the walls. It was everywhere, suffocating me. But the light beneath the door beckoned, pulling at my mind like a magnet, making it impossible to walk away. I had to open it. I gritted my teeth, forcing the doorknob to turn again. This time, it gave way with an agonizing creak, and the door slowly opened, revealing a room beyond. It was a room like no other. The walls were covered in strange symbols, ancient, etched deeply into the stone, glowing faintly with an eerie light. There was a table in the center, blood-stained and cracked. On it lay a figure, motionless. It was almost too hard to tell at first whether it was human or not. Its form was twisted, contorted in a way that defied nature. But the thing that struck me the most wasn't the figure on the table. It was the air. It was heavy with something foul, something wrong. I stepped into the room, my feet sinking into the cold, damp floor, and the door slammed shut behind me. The noise was deafening, the force of it making me jump. But I didn't have time to react. The figure on the table stirred. It didn't move like a living thing. It shifted in jerky, unnatural ways, as though it was being dragged by invisible strings. The skin was stretched too tight, the eyes wide open but blind, staring into nothing. And then, with a terrible groan, the figure slowly, painfully began to rise. Its mouth opened, stretching impossibly wide, and from it came a sound, a low, guttural growl that seemed to resonate from the very walls themselves. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I knew one thing. It wasn't supposed to be here. "You shouldn't have come." The voice came again, a chilling whisper at my ear. And I whipped around, but there was no one there. The figure on the table was standing now, its limbs twitching, as if it were still being controlled by some unseen force. Its face was a mask of agony, frozen in a grotesque expression that made my skin crawl. "You shouldn't have opened the door." The voice whispered again, and this time, it felt closer. So close, in fact, that I could feel the chill of it on my neck. I turned to run, but the room was no longer the room I had entered. The walls had shifted. The floor had changed. The door I had opened was no longer there. I was trapped. "Now, you'll join us," the figure hissed, and I felt its cold hand brush against my arm. A jolt of ice shot through my veins, and the darkness began to close in again, thick and oppressive. I fought to break free, to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The house was alive in ways I couldn't understand, and it wasn't going to let me leave. The weight of it all, the relentless darkness, the oppressive air, It was swallowing me whole, and I realized, with growing horror, that there was no escape. I stood there, frozen in place, my mind desperately clawing at the edges of reality. My breath came in ragged gasps as I tried to make sense of what was happening, but nothing made sense anymore. The figure before me, the thing that had once been human, loomed closer, its skin stretched tight across its bones like parchment, its eyes wide and empty. Its mouth opened, releasing a low, guttural sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Join us." The words weren't just spoken, they were felt. Like an invisible force, they wrapped themselves around my thoughts, crawling into the very core of my being. I could hear them echoing in my skull, reverberating, twisting, until I thought I might go mad from the pressure. I stumbled back, tripping over something on the floor, something I couldn't see in the suffocating dark. But I didn't need to see it. I could feel it, the presence of something watching, something waiting. My legs gave out, and I fell hard against the cold stone floor, the impact jarring my bones. Pain shot through me, but it was the least of my concerns. The figure was closer now, its eyes fixed on me, its face contorted in a twisted mockery of a smile. "You're already one of us." I shook my head, fighting against the words, fighting against the feeling that was trying to consume me. I wasn't one of them. I couldn't be. I was different. I had to be. But the room was changing. The walls were shifting, warping, as if they were alive, folding in on themselves like the skin of a great beast. The symbols etched into the stone pulsed with a sickly green glow, and the floor beneath me seemed to breathe, exhaling a foul, damp air that made my stomach churn. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, pressing down on me from all sides. I could feel my skin crawl, my pulse quickening, but no matter how much I tried to move, my body wouldn't obey. It was like I was sinking into the very foundation of the house, trapped by forces far beyond my control. Then I heard it, a click, a sharp, unnatural sound coming from behind me. I turned, my body jerking involuntarily, and saw something. No, someone emerge from the shadows. It was another figure, like the first, but this one wasn't as twisted. Its body was solid, its movements human, and it stood tall in the doorway that had appeared behind me, its eyes locked onto mine. It wasn't as grotesque as the others, but there was something in its gaze that sent a cold chill racing down my spine. It stepped forward, its movements smooth and deliberate, and I instinctively recoiled. "Don't be afraid." The voice was gentle, but there was a coldness to it, a chill that made my skin break out in goosebumps. It was a woman, or something that appeared to be. She was dressed in tattered clothes, like she'd been here for years, maybe decades. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes gleamed with an eerie light. "You've been marked," she said, her voice almost a whisper now. "You don't have a choice anymore." I swallowed, fighting to steady my breath. "Marked?" I choked out, my voice trembling. "What do you mean? What's happening here?" She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "You've opened the door. You've crossed the threshold. Now, you're bound to the house." I felt a jolt, like a lightning bolt that struck deep inside me. The house, this place, wasn't just a structure. It wasn't just a haunted building. It was something more. It was alive, and I was part of it now. "No," I breathed, shaking my head. "I can't be. I'm not one of you." But my words felt hollow, as if I didn't believe them myself anymore. There was a truth hanging in the air, one I was too terrified to confront. I was already trapped. She didn't answer me. Instead, her eyes flickered to the creature on the table, still twitching and jerking in grotesque, unnatural movements. The thing that had once been human, was watching me. Its eyes black voids filled with endless hunger. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. My body felt like it was weighed down by chains, held in place by some unseen force. You're not alone." The woman's voice broke through my thoughts, almost as if she could hear the panic rising within me. "We're all here. All of us who were taken, who were marked, taken." My throat felt tight. The words wouldn't come. I wanted to say something, to ask her why, but the answer already felt so clear. "Yes, taken," she confirmed, her voice laced with a strange sorrow. "All of us were once like you. You'll understand soon enough." Something inside me snapped. I couldn't. No. I wouldn't let this place consume me. I had to find a way out. But how? The woman seemed to sense my thoughts, her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "There is no escape," she whispered, "not anymore." Her words struck me like a hammer, the weight of them settling into my chest. I shook my head, my heart pounding in my ears. But then something shifted. The ground beneath me trembled, the air thickened, and the room, no, the house itself, seemed to pulse, as if it were alive, breathing. And with a horrifying realization, I understood. I wasn't just trapped in the house. The house was trapped in me. It was inside me, now, the darkness, the energy, the twisted forces that controlled everything. I could feel it in my veins, in my bones, in my mind. It was merging with me, claiming me as its own. "You're one of us now." The woman's voice was soft, almost comforting, but the terror in my chest only grew. There was no escape. Not anymore. I had no idea how long I sat there, frozen in the suffocating grip of the house. Time was meaningless. My mind, however, still functioned, though only barely. The whispers of the house were growing louder, invading my thoughts, curling around my every decision like tendrils of smoke. They wrapped themselves around my bones, my consciousness, and every inch of my existence. The woman, her presence still lingered in the air like a cold mist, had vanished, leaving only the oppressive silence in her wake. The thing on the table continued to twitch, its movements now erratic, like the final spasms of a dying creature, but I couldn't tear my gaze away. Every time I looked at it, I felt something in me twist, like a dark hunger rising from the pit of my stomach. "Help me." The voice broke through the fog in my mind. It wasn't the woman's, nor the creature's. It was faint, distant, and broken, almost as if it were an echo from a place far beyond the physical world. I stood, unsteady, my legs trembling beneath me. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, yet there was no one in sight. My eyes darted around the dimly lit room, trying to pierce through the darkness that clung to every corner, but all I saw was the same oppressive emptiness. "Police." The voice came again, this time clearer. It was a cry filled with desperation and pain. I couldn't place it, but something about it felt familiar. It felt like it was inside me, inside my very thoughts. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest, and followed the sound. The house creaked and groaned around me, its ancient bones shifting and whispering, as if the very walls were alive. The air was thick, suffocating, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, as if they had a life of their own. I was beginning to understand the house was not just a place. It was a living entity, feeding on everything that crossed its threshold. The walls seemed to close in on me as I walked down the narrow hallway, my every step echoing in the silence. The voice was growing louder, clearer with each passing moment. "Help me, please." I stumbled forward, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The walls around me seemed to shift, as if they were guiding me, pushing me toward something. A door. At the end of the hallway, a door stood ajar, an eerie glow spilling from the crack. It was an unnatural light, flickering like the last remnants of a dying flame. My instincts screamed at me to turn away, but I couldn't. My body moved of its own accord, drawn to the light. I reached the door and pushed it open. Inside was a small room, bare except for a single object in the center. A mirror. The glass was old, cracked, and tarnished with time, but as I stepped closer, I saw something, someone, standing inside it. The figure was me. but not. It was a twisted, distorted version of myself. My face, pale and gaunt, was stretched and warped. My eyes, those eyes, were black as pitch, filled with the same emptiness I had seen in the creatures that roamed the house. But there was something different about it, something more sinister. "You shouldn't have come here." The figure in the mirror spoke, its voice identical to mine, yet colder, hollow. "You can't escape what you've become." I recoiled, stumbling backward. My hand shot out, pressing against the cold stone of the wall, and I turned my gaze away, shaking my head. No, I wasn't like that thing. I couldn't be. But deep down, I knew the truth. The mirror, like the house, had a way of revealing the things we couldn't hide. The darkness that had begun to creep into my soul, the twisted pull of the house, had already taken root in me. "You're already one of us." The figure in the mirror repeated, its smile spreading wider. "There's no going back." I closed my eyes, trying to block out its voice, trying to drown out the horror that had settled in my chest. But it was no use. The mirror's reflection had become my own personal nightmare, a reminder of the fate I couldn't escape. Suddenly, I heard the door behind me creak open. I turned, heart pounding, to see another figure standing in the doorway. It was the woman again, the one who had told me I was marked. She stepped into the room, her face unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that made the blood in my veins run cold. She was no longer just a stranger. She was a part of this place, just like I was. Her gaze flickered to the mirror, and then to me. "You've seen it now, haven't you?" she said softly. "The reflection is the house's way of showing us what we've become." I nodded numbly, unable to speak. "It's not just your mind it's taking, you know," she continued, her voice low. "It feeds on your soul, your essence. It twists you, bends you until there's nothing left but its will." I felt sick. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't respond. The house had already claimed me, and now it was consuming me from the inside out. "But there's hope," she whispered, stepping closer. "There are others who've found a way to fight back. They're hidden, trapped in the house, just like you. They're waiting for someone to wake them up, to remember. Wake them up." I managed to croak, my throat dry and raw. She nodded, her eyes filled with something dark, something dangerous. "Find them. Free them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to free yourself too." With those words hanging in the air, she turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving me alone with my reflection. The thing in the mirror, the twisted version of myself, stared back, its eyes now glinting with something cruel. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. I stood there in the oppressive silence, the air thick with the weight of everything that had happened, everything that was yet to come. The woman's words echoed in my mind. Find them, free them. But how? Who were these others she spoke of? Trapped and hidden within the house, just like me. The room felt colder now, the mirror reflecting a version of me that I wasn't sure was even real anymore. Was it the house that twisted me? Or had it already been twisting me before I even stepped inside? I stumbled back into the hallway, my breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. I had to find answers. I had to understand what was happening to me and what the house was trying to do to me. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls pulsating with a low hum, as though the house itself was breathing. Every door I passed felt as though it was watching me, its darkened windows staring back with an empty hunger. The house had eyes, it seemed, thousands of eyes, all trained on me. I had no destination in mind, no plan, only the overwhelming urge to keep moving. There had to be more to this place, more than I could see in the dark. I reached another door, its surface covered in thick, peeling wallpaper. Unlike the others, this door was partially open, a sliver of light spilling from the crack. It didn't feel like the others. It wasn't cold or suffocating. It felt almost inviting. I hesitated for a moment, but only for a moment. Something about it called to me, a pull that was both gentle and insistent. I pushed the door open. Inside was a room bathed in dim light, the walls lined with old, dusty bookshelves. The air was thick with the smell of aged paper and forgotten knowledge. At the center of the room stood a table, its surface cluttered with strange, archaic objects, candles, feathers, dried herbs. But what caught my attention was the figure seated at the table. It was a man, his face hidden by a dark hood. He didn't move when I entered, didn't acknowledge my presence. He sat there, still and silent, like a statue. But something about him felt different, like he was waiting for me. I took a tentative step forward, then another. The room felt heavier with each movement, the air growing thick with tension. It wasn't until I was standing directly in front of him that he spoke. "You've come." His voice was low and raspy, like the sound of dry leaves rustling in the wind. "I've been waiting for you." I stared at him, unsure of what to say. My mind raced, but no words came. Was this another trick of the house? Another twisted game? "You're not the first," he continued, his voice unshaken by the fear that gripped me. "Others have come before you. They sought answers, too. They sought to understand what happened to them, to escape the house. But none of them were ready." I swallowed hard, stepping back. "What do you mean?" The figure finally moved, his hand reaching out and lifting a small object from the table. It was a book, its cover old and worn, its pages yellowed with age. He handed it to me without a word. I hesitated, but I couldn't resist. I took the book, its weight heavy in my hands. The moment my fingers brushed the cover, a sharp chill ran up my spine. It felt alive, as though it had been waiting for me all along. "You'll need this." The man's voice was barely a whisper now. "The others, those you seek, are trapped in places you will never find unless you understand this. The house is not just a place. It is a living entity, and it feeds on the lost. But there are those who have learned to hide. You must find them, wake them, before it's too late." I opened the book, my heart pounding in my chest as the pages flicked past my fingers. The writing was ancient, the ink faded and uneven. But the words, they were familiar. They resonated deep within me, like a forgotten language stirring to life in my mind. "They have forgotten," the man said, his voice cold now, distant. "They've all forgotten who they are. But you're different. You still remember. The house cannot erase your memories as it has with the others. You must not forget." I nodded, though I didn't fully understand what he meant. "What do I do? How do I free them?" "You have to wake them." The man's eyes gleamed with a strange, unspoken knowledge. "You must find the places where the house's grip is weakest. There, you will find the others trapped in the darkness. But be warned, once you wake them, there will be no going back." The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. No going back. The house's grip was unyielding. I had already felt it tighten around my chest, pulling me deeper into its suffocating darkness. Could I free the others without losing myself completely? "And what happens to me?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure didn't answer immediately. His eyes seemed to bore into me, as though he was searching for something in my soul. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, almost sad. "That is up to you. But remember," he paused, leaning closer, "the house doesn't let go easily." I closed the book, the weight of his warning pressing down on me like an anchor. I could feel it, the pull, the suffocating darkness that had followed me since I stepped into this place. It was growing stronger, tighter. The house was waking, too, and it was hungry. I turned to leave the room, clutching the book tightly against my chest. As I crossed the threshold, I could feel the man's eyes on me, following my every move. "Find them," before the house finds you." His words followed me down the hallway, echoing in the empty space. The house was changing, shifting again. I didn't know if I was ready for what lay ahead, but I had no choice. I had to find the others. I had to wake them. Before it was too late. I couldn't shake the man's words. The house didn't let go easily, and neither did the book. Every time I tried to set it down, I felt a pull to keep it close. It was as if it was part of me now, its weight more than just physical. An emotional anchor that kept me grounded in the horror that was unfolding around me. The hallway seemed endless as I walked, each step heavier than the last. The walls appeared to shift and warp with every blink, a maddening dance of shadows and light. I felt the house breathing, pulsing, alive in ways I couldn't comprehend. It was watching me, waiting, calculating my every move. I turned a corner and stopped dead in my tracks. The next room was different. Too different. It wasn't just the oppressive air or the dimness that made my heart race. It was the silence. The walls were bare, save for a large painting hanging in the center. At first, I thought it was a portrait of some long, dead relative of the house's original owners, but as I moved closer, I realized it wasn't a person at all. It was a figure, a shadow, dark and indistinct, standing in the middle of the room. But there was something off about it. The edges of the shadow blurred and stretched, reaching out like fingers, grasping at the air. I couldn't move. My body refused to obey. It was as if the very room itself was holding me still, locking me in place. The shadow didn't move, didn't speak. It just watched. My breath came faster, and for a moment, I thought I was going to suffocate from the pressure. Then, a whisper broke through the silence, soft at first but growing louder, more insistent. "Help us." It was a voice, a woman's voice, echoing in my mind. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it. The woman from the mirror, the one who had urged me to free the others. Help us. I didn't know if I was hearing it or imagining it, but it didn't matter. The voice was real, and it was calling out for help. I reached out, my hand trembling as it neared the painting. The shadow seemed to shift, pulling me in, its edges growing sharper and more defined. I could almost feel it, the pull, the hunger. I stepped forward, the floor creaking under my feet as I crossed the threshold into the room. The shadow didn't move. It just loomed there, watching, waiting. As I drew closer, the air grew colder. My fingers brushed the surface of the painting. And then, it shifted. The shadow began to move, stretching and twisting like smoke, crawling up the walls, creeping toward me. I tried to step back, but the room had closed in, the walls pressing inward, suffocating me. The shadow reached for me, its tendrils brushing against my skin, leaving a cold, tingling sensation that burned where it touched. No, no, no. I whispered to myself, fighting the panic rising in my chest. This wasn't right. This wasn't just a shadow. It was something else, something alive. Suddenly, the room exploded with a deafening sound, like glass shattering, and the shadow recoiled as though in pain. The floor buckled beneath me, the room trembling, as if the very foundation of the house was breaking apart. I fell to my knees, clutching the book to my chest as the world around me twisted and shifted. Through the chaos, a figure appeared. A woman, her face obscured by long, dark hair, stood at the far end of the room. She was motionless, but her presence filled the room, filling every corner with her weight. The shadow seemed to cower in her presence, retreating back into the painting, its form shrinking and flickering like a dying flame. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was low, haunting. It reverberated in my bones. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. The house, the room, seemed to be pressing against my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. "You're not ready," she said, her voice growing more urgent. "You have to leave. Now." I wanted to obey, to run. But the shadows, the book, the woman's words, all of it felt like a weight I couldn't escape. I was too far in now, too deeply entangled in the house's grip to walk away. But just as I tried to gather the strength to move, something changed. A sound, a grinding, screeching noise, cut through the air, sharp and piercing. The walls of the room cracked, long, jagged fissures opening like wounds, spilling blackness into the air. The shadow flared up, growing larger, more tangible, its tendrils reaching out to reclaim the room. The woman stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "This is your last chance." Her voice was a command now, raw with desperation. "The house is waking. And once it has you, it won't let you go." I didn't know what to do. Everything was spiraling out of control. I opened my mouth to ask her what I needed to do to escape, but before I could speak, a sharp pain shot through my chest, like a cold hand squeezing my heart. The woman's form flickered, as though the darkness around her was swallowing her up, and I saw it. The eyes, thousands of them, hidden in the shadows. They were all staring at me, waiting for me to make my choice. The shadow surged forward, and I felt myself being pulled back into the painting, into the darkness that beckoned with its cold, insatiable hunger. "Help us." The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was the woman's outstretched hand, an offer of salvation or a final warning. And then, everything went black. I woke with a violent jolt, gasping for air as though I had been drowning. The world around me was dark, too dark, a suffocating, inky blackness that swallowed every shred of light. My heart hammered in my chest, and I felt that cold, familiar presence pressing down on me, a weight too heavy to bear. It was as if I was trapped beneath the earth, buried alive. I couldn't see, couldn't move. The book was still in my hands, its pages seeming to hum with a life of their own, a pulse that matched the frantic beat of my heart. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was dry, cracked, as though I had been screaming for hours, or longer. Every breath I took felt like it might be my last, the air thick with a strange, metallic taste that clung to my tongue. I could feel the walls closing in on me, pressing against my ribs, forcing the breath from my lungs. I was still in the house. The house. The moment the thought crossed my mind, the suffocating darkness shifted, and a flicker of light appeared in the distance. It was faint, but unmistakable. I couldn't tell if it was real or just my mind playing tricks, but it was something. A glimmer of hope, or perhaps a lure. With every ounce of willpower I had left, I began to crawl toward the light. The floor was cold and slick beneath me, as though the house itself was wet, alive with some sinister fluid. My fingers scraped against the floor, finding no purchase, but I didn't stop. I had to get to the light, had to escape this suffocating grip. As I crawled, the shadows seemed to pull at me, dragging at my limbs, pulling me back into the darkness. The book in my hands pulsed again, sending waves of cold through my body. I gritted my teeth, fighting the pull, forcing my way toward the light. It grew brighter as I drew closer, and soon I could make out a shape, a doorway. A way out. I surged forward, ignoring the agony in my muscles, the burning in my chest. But as I reached the doorway, a chilling voice echoed in my mind. "You think you can leave?" The words were a whisper, but they rang out like a scream in the silence. I stopped dead in my tracks, my hand still reaching for the door. The voice was everywhere, surrounding me, suffocating me. "You don't understand. The house owns you now." It was the woman's voice, the same voice I had heard in the painting, in the room with the shadow. I could almost see her now. Though the darkness swallowed her form, her presence filled the space around me like a suffocating fog. "The house doesn't let go easily," she whispered, the words seeping into my mind. "It will never let you go. Not unless you pay the price." I turned, desperate to find her, to understand what she meant. But the darkness swallowed everything around me, leaving nothing but the distant flicker of the doorway. The pull of the house was growing stronger now, dragging at my very soul. I had no choice but to move forward, to reach for the light. I didn't care if it was a trap. The house had already taken so much from me. Too much. I couldn't stay here. I stepped into the doorway. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The light blinked out, replaced by an overwhelming sound. The creaking of wood, the groaning of the house as it shifted. I was falling. No, it wasn't falling. It was as if the entire house was crumbling beneath me, its foundations shaking. I tried to scream, but once again, the darkness swallowed my voice. Then, everything went still. Absolute silence. No creaking, no groaning, just the suffocating pressure of the house pressing in on me. I opened my eyes, though I wasn't sure when I had closed them. I was in a room. A different room, one I hadn't seen before. The walls were cracked, the floor uneven. But the strangest part was the stillness, the absence of shadows. It was as if the house itself had gone to sleep. Its pulse, its breath, gone. But I knew better than to trust the silence. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me, and glanced around. The room was small, dimly lit by a single flickering candle in the corner. But it wasn't the room itself that caught my attention. It was the mirror. At first, I thought it was just another piece of furniture, another haunting reflection. But as I drew closer, I saw something more. The reflection in the mirror was different. It wasn't my own face staring back at me. It was the woman, the one from the painting, from the shadows. She was standing just behind me, her eyes wide, her mouth agape as though she was screaming. But no sound came. I spun around, but the room was empty. Nothing but the mirror and the candle. I felt a pull, an undeniable urge to touch the mirror. My hand reached for it before I could stop myself, and as my fingers brushed the cold glass, the world seemed to collapse. I fell forward, the mirror's surface rippling like water, and then, nothing. I woke up again. But this time it was different. I was outside. The sky above me was dark, clouds swirling ominously as if they, too, were part of the house's twisted, oppressive grip. The ground beneath me was soft, wet, muddy. I didn't recognize the place, but it felt wrong. Alien. The house was nowhere to be seen, but I knew it was still there. It would always be there. I was free. But at what cost?